Whether it's books, movies, or even TV shows, oftentimes the order that things are released aren't the chronological order of how things are in that world, or universe rather, whichever you prefer. My name is Anna Weber, and today I am going to be listing the order I think the order of how the Nancy Drew games play out. And by that I mean like which Nancy Drew game occurs first and which Nancy Drew game I think occurs last. Now, a bit of warning before I get into this list. If I did not include some of the newer Nancy Drew games, I just included the ones that I have played, because I know nothing about the ones that I have not played, and I couldn't very well place them if I didn't know where and what's going on in them. So, just the games that I have played are on this timeline. Okay. Now, clearly the first game in our chronological order has to be Nancy Drew's Secret of the Old Clock. Not just because it's based off of the first book in the Nancy Drew series, but also because it is set during the Great Depression, and all the rest of the games are set during modern day, or the 2000s. So clearly this game takes place a long time before the rest. Okay, second on the list is Treasure in the Royal Tower. I choose this to be next after The Secret of the Old Clock because it's one of the most least teched game that I could think of. Like you don't come across a whole lot of mechanical stuff except for the elevator and the phone. And also, Nancy does not have her cell phone in this game, so clearly it has to take place early on before Nancy has a cell phone. Next up is Message in the Haunted Mansion. I put it here because the last game took place sometime during winter, and this one clearly takes place sometime during spring, based on what the characters are wearing, and unless I'm mistaken, Charlie, the character in the game, says something about starting his first day at a new college or something, and not having enough money for a dorm room. And you usually start school or college in spring. Next is Secret of the Scarlet Hand, set in summer. I say set in summer because we don't see any snow on the ground or leaves on the ground when we're outside in the game. And also, this is the first time Nancy actually has a job in a game. And most of the time when people get a job for the first time, it is during the summer. Next up is Secrets Can Kill, set in fall, obviously because it's during the school year. Like right smack dab in the middle of the school year. Nancy says at one point in the middle of her letter that who would guess that a trip to Eloise would result in another case, meaning she has solved a case before. That is how come Secrets Can Kill cannot be the first one in our timeline, because it just wouldn't make sense. And also, in the game Secrets of the Old Clock, Nancy does not get hired by anyone to solve the mystery. She just sort of solves it on her own, just because it sounds like fun. Okay, next up is Stay Tuned for Danger, one of my personal favorites, by the way. I said it in spring based off of what everyone's wearing in the game, and also because we go outside almost every day in the game, and at one point we even go outside at night, and if it were winter, and so it couldn't be winter, because if we went outside in the middle of winter, Nancy would get really, really cold, and if it were fall, we would obviously see leaves on the ground or something, so I said it in spring. because everyone I saw in the game was wearing long sleeves, and they wouldn't be wearing long sleeves in summer, that's for sure. Especially not in the Big Apple. Okay, next up is the final seed. Now, I set this one in summer because, obviously it has to be in the middle of summer because not only would it make sense if it was early on in the summer for Maya to be doing a big story right before school gets out, but it would also make sense if it were in really early summer because Nicholas Falcone is wearing a t-shirt and he would be freezing if it were any other time of the year. Next up is Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, set in the fall. I say it's set in the fall because, like, when you're in the woods and stuff, you see a lot of leaves on the ground, and it just makes sense with the overall feel of the game, that it would be set in the fall. Also, fun fact, this is the first game that the Hardy Boys are mentioned in. Okay, number 9, Haunted Carousel, one of my personal favorites. Set in spring. Also, it's the first time Nancy has a cell phone. It's important because all the other games on this list thus far have not had her cell phone in it. See, I made special sure that all the games before this did not have her cell phone in it because this is when she gets her cell phone. And it would wreck the timeline all together if she suddenly had her cell phone and then suddenly didn't have her cell phone. So I was very careful with the details. Okay, next up we have Danger on Deception Island, set in the summer. I said it in summer because everyone in the game except for Holt Scotto is wearing short sleeves. Oh, and the villain. Anywhoosies, almost everyone is wearing short sleeves, and also it just seemed like a good place to put it. Next up is Curse of Blackmore Manor, set in the fall. I just say it's set in the fall because we hardly ever go outside in this game, and on the cover it has a lot of like dark colors that just give the overall feel of fall. Next up is Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, set in the winter. Now, personally, when I first thought of Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, I first thought of summer. But then I thought of the one at one point when Fatima, that's a character in the game, says, "Do that and you'll be headfirst in the nearest snowdrift." And when do we have snow? Winter. So it must take place in winter. Next up, we have Danger by Design, set in spring. I feel like at some point in the game they actually say that she's designing her spring line or something, but mainly I thought this set was set in spring because of how the characters are dressed, and Minette seems to be really, really busy. And why is she really, really busy? Because it's a new year and she has to design a new line. Okay. Next up is Secret of the Shadow Ranch, set in summer. Now, originally, I was going to set this in the fall, but then I remembered that Secret of the Shadow Ranch, in the game, there's a thermometer, and when you click on it, Nancy says things like, "Phew, talk about your scorcher." So that means it's a really hot day. And when is it usually really, really hot? In summer. Okay, next up is Legend of the Crystal Skull, which I set in fall because it is really stormy and it just has an overall fall feel to it. Okay, next up we have Warnings at Waverly Academy. Obviously set in winter because there's snow. Next up is Creature of Kapu Cave, which I set in the spring because it just has an overall springy feel to it. Next up is Phantom of Venice, which I set in summer because of the overall feel to it. Next up is Shadow at the Water's Edge, set in fall. I set this one in fall because when you're in the gardens in the game, it just feels like it's fall. It just has that overall vibe. Next up is The Captive Curse, also set in fall. I set this one in fall because you never really go outside in this one, and the way everybody's dressed just seems like something everyone would wear in fall. Okay, next up is White Wolf of Icicle Creek, set in winter. Now, you may be thinking back to White Wolf of Icicle Creek, this should be higher on the list. Nancy doesn't have her cell phone in that one. Well, that's because there's no cell service in Canada for Nancy's cell phone. So that's why that's here, because Nancy has to have her phone for it to not have service. Next up is another game where Nancy has no cell phone service, Haunting at Castle Malloy, set in spring. I put it here in spring because the whole game is centered around Matt and Kyler's wedding. And when do most people get married? In the spring. Next up is Ransom of the Seven Ships, set in summer. And I just realized I put 2 kidnappings in a row. Well, not really kidnappings. Well, yeah, it's basically kidnappings. Okay, kidnappings. Next up is Ghost of Thornton Hall, set in the fall, because it just seems to make sense with the overall tone. Finally, Alibi and Ashes, set in spring, because, like I said, it just seems to fit well with what everybody's wearing in the game. And finally, Trail of the Twister, set in the summer. Why did I set this one in summer? Well, because it's all based around tornadoes and stuff, and I don't know about you, but tornadoes happen the most, where I live in summer. So that's my timeline for the Nancy Drew games. Have something that contradicts something on my list? Then please leave a comment down below telling me so. And if you have your own thoughts to a different order of how things could run, please post that down in the comments too. Share and share alike. Share this video if you want. Comment, rate, subscribe. Do all that. And hopefully, after I play some of these newer games, I'll be able to update this timeline. Until then, I will see you next time.